the fat daughter who hated the mirror, until the alpha vampire said, "You are perfect." The castle of Eldoria loomed over the misty valley like a shadow frozen in time. Its black spires touched the clouds, and the wind whispered through the ancient stone walls, carrying stories of power, secrets, and fear. In the village below, children ran and played, unaware of the eyes that watched them from the windows high above. Among the villagers lived Lyria, the youngest daughter of a minor noble family. She was a quiet girl, with soft brown eyes that seemed to hide 1,000 sorrows. Lyria had grown up under the shadow of her elder sister, Althea, whose beauty and grace drew admiration wherever she went. Lyria, by contrast, avoided mirrors, fearful of the reflection she saw there. Every morning her reflection stared back at her with eyes too large, cheeks too round, and a smile she didn't recognize. Her father barely noticed her, too wrapped up in the expectations of status and alliances. Her mother scolded her for being slow or clumsy. And her sister, Althea, moved through life as if the world were a stage built solely for her. Lyria had learned early that she did not belong in that world of beauty and admiration. She belonged in the corners, the shadows, where no one looked too closely. Tonight, the castle of Eldoria was hosting a grand masquerade, a festival that drew nobles from all over the kingdom. The streets of the village were emptying as lanterns glowed like fireflies, and a river of horse-drawn carriages flowed toward the city gates. Lyria's mother had forced her to attend. "You will go," she had said sharply, "and you will behave. Perhaps someone will notice you for once." Lyria wanted to argue, wanted to say that she did not belong, but she simply nodded and allowed herself to be dressed in a gown of deep emerald. It was not the color of queens, nor the silk of princesses, but it was the only dress she had that did not draw attention to her shape. As she entered the ballroom, her heart sank. The hall was alive with music, laughter, and dancing. Candles flickered on golden chandeliers, casting a warm glow over faces that all seemed more beautiful than hers. She tried to make herself small, to blend into the shadows near the walls. She watched Althea glide across the floor, her gown shimmering like moonlight, and a prince from a neighboring kingdom smiling at her every move. Lyria's chest tightened. She hated mirrors, she hated reflections, and most of all, she hated how the world seemed to celebrate everyone but her. And yet, she could not look away from the distant figure who stood in the farthest shadows of the hall. He was tall, impossibly tall, with broad shoulders and hair as black as midnight. His eyes glowed faintly red under the mask he wore, and the presence around him seemed to push the very air away from others. Whispers fluttered through the crowd. "He is Kale, the alpha vampire," someone said. "No one dares approach him." Lyria had heard the stories of Kale before, centuries old, ruthless, feared by kings and queens alike. No one had ever truly seen his heart or survived seeing it, and yet something about him drew her in. She could not explain it, but her feet seemed rooted to the floor, her eyes locked on his shadowed figure. She wanted to look away, to hide, but curiosity, like a spark in the dark, had taken hold. Her thoughts were interrupted by laughter, sharp, cruel laughter. A group of noble girls had spotted her hiding near the wall. "Oh, look at her dress! Who let the baker's daughter in?" one sneered. "She looks like a lump of dough," another said. Lyria's cheeks burned and tears threatened to spill. She wanted to run, but the crowd closed in, their words slicing at her heart. She wanted to vanish, to dissolve into the floor and escape the mockery that had followed her all her life. Then, a shadow moved. The tall figure from the corner approached with a calm, measured step. The crowd parted instinctively, whispers trailing behind him. Lyria's breath caught as he stopped just a few feet away. His mask hid most of his face, but his eyes, deep, crimson, and unsettlingly kind, met hers. "Do they hurt you?" he asked softly, his voice smooth, almost musical. Lyria shook her head, but her voice caught in her throat. I'm used to it," she whispered. Kale's gaze lingered on her, as if seeing through every layer of fear and self-doubt. No one should feel that way, he said. No one should be told they are less than they are. For the first time in her life, Lyria felt a warmth she had never known. It was not the warmth of laughter or praise or celebration. It was the warmth of being seen. Truly seen, without judgment, without ridicule. Before she could reply, her mother appeared at the edge of the hall, scowling. "Lyria, come here. Stop talking to strangers," she demanded, unaware that she was speaking to the most feared being in the kingdom. Kale's lips curved into a small, knowing smile. "Do not fear them," he murmured, stepping back into the shadows, disappearing as quickly as he had appeared. Lyria blinked, unsure if he had been real or a fragment of a dream. The rest of the night passed in a blur. Lyria moved like a ghost through the hall, unnoticed, unremarkable until the grand finale, the unmasking ceremony. Noble faces were revealed. Laughter and whispers filled the hall, and Lyria felt more invisible than ever. She slipped away, seeking the quiet of the gardens outside. The moon hung low over the stone fountains, casting silver light over the roses and hedges. And there, by the edge of the garden, was a letter. Black wax sealed it with a symbol she did not recognize, a crescent moon cradling a fang. Her hands trembled as she broke the seal. The words inside were written in ink that seemed to shimmer in the moonlight. "You are invited. Come to the castle of shadows, where the night is kind and the truth is revealed." Lyria's heart raced. The invitation was impossible, dangerous, and terrifying. No one invited the likes of her to the castle of Kale. And yet, she could not resist. The pull in her chest, the curiosity that had first gripped her in the ballroom, grew stronger. Something inside her whispered that this was a chance to be seen, to finally step out of the shadows she had lived in all her life. The next morning, she packed a small bag. She dressed in the simplest clothes she owned, hiding her body as best she could, and left a note for her family, though she knew they would never understand. Her journey to the castle began along the winding road through the misty valley, the trees casting long, eerie shadows over the path. Every step felt like walking into a story she was not ready to believe, but could not resist. Hours passed, and the castle grew taller as she approached. Its gates, black iron adorned with spikes and twisting vines, opened silently as if expecting her. Lyria stepped inside, the air thick with the scent of ancient stone and a faint hint of roses. She felt eyes on her, not in the fearsome way she expected, but in a way that made her heart flutter. A voice echoed through the hall, low and commanding, yet soft. "Welcome, Lyria." She spun, and there he was, Kale, more imposing than she had imagined, yet not terrifying. Not entirely. His eyes searched hers, and in that moment all the mockery, all the self-hatred, all the years of being invisible seemed to falter. "You came," he said, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his lips. I had to," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. Kale stepped closer, and she felt the weight of his presence, not threatening but powerful, compelling. "You are not what they say you are," he said. "You are not defined by whispers or mirrors. You are perfect." Lyria froze, her mind spinning. Perfect. The word had never been said to her before. She had been invisible, overlooked, mocked. And now this being, feared by all, called her perfect. Her knees weakened, and she sank onto the cold stone floor, trying to comprehend the meaning of the words. "Perfect?" she asked, almost afraid to speak them aloud. "Yes," Kale said, kneeling beside her. "You are seen, truly seen, and for the first time you must see yourself as I see you." Lyria's chest tightened with a mix of disbelief and wonder. She wanted to argue, to deny it, but no words came. The wind howled through the hall, carrying the scent of roses and stone. Shadows flickered, and in the flickering candlelight, Lyria felt the first spark of something she had never known: hope. The sound of distant footsteps echoed through the hall. Someone or something was coming. Kale rose to his full height, his eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. "You must be ready," he said, his voice serious now. "Tonight is only the beginning." Lyria's heart pounded as she looked at him. Fear, excitement, and a strange longing twisted together inside her. She had no idea what awaited her in the castle of shadows, but for the first time in her life she felt wanted, seen. And maybe, just maybe, she would find the strength to see herself as perfect too. The castle doors closed behind her with a slow, echoing thud. Outside, the mist curled around the towers, and the moon shone brighter, as if marking the start of a story that would change everything. The halls of Kale's castle were alive with whispers that no one spoke aloud. Each corridor seemed endless, lined with towering stone pillars that stretched into shadowed arches. The air smelled faintly of roses and old parchment, and the flickering candlelight danced across walls carved with stories long forgotten. Lyria stepped cautiously, clutching the folds of her emerald gown. Her heart beat fast, a mixture of fear, curiosity, and a strange excitement she could not name. Kale moved beside her, silent and steady, his presence overwhelming yet protective. His crimson eyes scanned the corridors, alert to every shift of shadow and sound. Lyria could feel the power emanating from him, not aggressive, not threatening, but undeniable, like a tide that could sweep her away if she were not careful. "You are not afraid of me?" Kale asked softly, his voice echoing just enough to reach her ears without disturbing the castle's ancient quiet. I don't know," Lyria admitted. "I should be. Everyone says you are," her words faltered. She wanted to say dangerous, but the truth felt heavier, more complicated. She had never felt danger and safety at the same time, but that was what Kale made her feel. "You are stronger than you know," he said. "Fear can guide you or it can break you. Which will you allow it to do?" Lyria swallowed hard. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to trust him. And yet, the shadows in the castle reminded her that she did not know what awaited around each corner. They entered a large hall, circular and high-ceilinged, with mirrors that stretched from floor to roof. Lyria froze, her chest tightened. Mirrors, everywhere she looked, mirrors. She had hated them for so long, hated the way they reflected her flaws, the way they whispered cruel reminders of her body, her weight, her supposed imperfections. She had avoided them all her life. Kale watched her reaction quietly, a hint of understanding in his gaze. "You do not have to look," he said softly. "Not yet, but you will when you are ready." Lyria shook her head, stepping back toward the shadows. "I am not ready," she whispered. I don't want to see." "That is why you must," Kale said, his voice steady, patient, and strangely comforting. "You have lived your life avoiding the reflection, believing lies about yourself. But the mirror does not lie. Only you have been blind to the truth." She wanted to protest, but no words came. His presence was magnetic, pulling at her curiosity and something deeper in her chest, a desire to be seen, to be understood, to be accepted. Kale led her to the center of the hall, where a single mirror stood taller than both of them. It was framed with black iron twisted like vines, etched with symbols Lyria could not understand. The glass itself shimmered faintly, almost alive. He gestured toward it. "Look," he said. "Do not fear, only see." Her hands shook as she stepped closer. For years she had avoided reflections, convinced they only reminded her of what she lacked. And yet something about this mirror, something magical, something alive, urged her forward. She raised her eyes slowly, and what she saw made her heart ache. It was her face, yes, but different, softer, stronger. There was a glow to her eyes she had never seen before. Her cheeks, round and full, seemed alive with warmth. Her lips, which she had always thought too wide, curved naturally, beautifully. And her body, her weight, her shape, was not shameful, not ugly. It was whole, strong, perfect in its own way. Lyria stumbled backward, almost tripping over the edge of the rug. She could not believe what she saw. This is not me," she whispered. Kale stepped closer, his shadow falling over the mirror. "It is," he said. "The mirror does not lie. The lies were not in you, they were in the eyes that refused to see, and in the heart that refused to believe." Tears pricked her eyes. She had spent her life hiding from herself, hating what she saw, fearing that no one could ever love her. And here was Kale, centuries old, feared by the world, telling her that she was more than enough, that she was perfect. I don't know how to, Lyria's voice broke. I don't know how to believe it. Kale reached out, placing a hand near hers, though he did not touch. The energy between them hummed like a quiet storm. You will, he said. I will help you. But you must be willing to see yourself, not through their eyes, not through mirrors of fear, but through the eyes of truth. The moment was interrupted by a sudden flicker of shadow in the hall. Lyria jumped, and Kale's eyes sharpened, glowing faintly in the candlelight. Someone approaches, he said, his voice low, commanding. Stay behind me. Through the mirrors, Lyria could see a figure moving silently, gliding through the shadows. It was not human. Its form shifted and flickered like smoke or mist. Lyria's heart pounded. She wanted to run, but Kale's presence grounded her. She was no longer entirely alone. The figure stopped at the edge of the hall, and Kale's voice rang out, sharp and clear. I warned you, do not come here. There was a pause, then a low, haunting laugh. Kale, the voice said, smooth and dangerous. Always the protector of the weak, but even you have weaknesses. Lyria's fear surged. She had no idea who or what stood before them, but Kale did. He moved like lightning, his presence expanding, commanding the shadows to bend around him. You will not touch her, Kale said, his voice unwavering. Not now, not ever. The figure laughed again, fading back into the shadows. Soon, Kale. Soon, the voice whispered, leaving a chill in its wake. Kale turned to Lyria. They are testing you, he said. The castle, the shadows, the forces you cannot see, they are part of a world you are stepping into. But do not fear, I will protect you. Lyria nodded, though her body trembled. She realized she had never felt more alive, more aware of her own heart, and more aware of the danger surrounding her. And yet, the fear was not enough to make her turn back. Something inside told her that this was her path, her moment to step into a story larger than herself. Kale led her deeper into the castle, through corridors filled with flickering torches and staircases that seemed to twist in impossible angles. Each room held secrets, books that whispered in languages she did not know, paintings that seemed to move when she looked away, and sculptures that felt almost alive. You will learn, Kale said, that appearances are illusions. The world will try to define you by shape, by size, by fear, but that is not truth. You are more than what they see, and tonight you will begin to see it yourself. Hours passed. Lyria began to understand that the castle itself was a reflection of Kale, mysterious, powerful, dangerous, yet deeply alive. And in its darkness, she found her own courage growing. The fear she had carried all her life did not vanish, but it no longer controlled her. She felt a spark of strength, a thread of hope that perhaps she could be more than the girl who hated her reflection. At the highest tower, Kale paused, and the city lights of Eldoria spread below them like a river of stars. The night is vast, he said, and full of secrets. But you are here, that means something. Lyria looked at him, her eyes wide with wonder. I don't understand. Why me? Kale's gaze softened, but there was a weight in his eyes, a sadness centuries deep. Because you are the first in a long time who could help me see again. And perhaps in seeing yourself, you will help me see myself. The wind stirred around them, carrying a soft, haunting melody from the castle's enchanted halls. Lyria felt a shiver of both fear and longing. She wanted to ask what came next, what trials awaited her, what secrets the castle still held. But she also knew she could not stop now. She had stepped into this story, into this night, into a world that would change her forever. And then from the shadows behind them, a soft, almost imperceptible whisper echoed. She is not yours to protect. Lyria's heart froze. Kale's eyes narrowed, and the shadows around the tower seemed to twist and pulse. Stay close to me, he said quietly, his hand brushing hers, not touching but close enough to steady her trembling. She nodded, gripping her own courage like a lifeline. The night was far from over. The castle was alive, the shadows were watching, and the story of Lyria, the girl who had hated mirrors, was only just beginning. The night air outside the castle was thick with mist, curling like silver snakes around the towering walls. Lyria followed Kale as he led her through a hidden passageway, one she had never seen before in all the hours she had walked the castle halls. The walls here were older, carved with symbols that glowed faintly in the darkness, pulsing with a rhythm she felt deep in her chest. "Where are we going?" she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "To the forest," Kale replied, "the place where truth is revealed." Lyria's brow furrowed. The forest outside the castle was known for strange stories. Trees that moved on their own, whispers in the wind that could drive a person mad, shadows that hid dangers unseen. And yet, something in Kale's calm, commanding voice reassured her. She knew that as long as he was near, she could face what lay ahead. The castle gates opened silently before them, revealing the forest bathed in moonlight. Mist swirled across the ground, and the twisted branches formed strange patterns above. Every step they took seemed to echo, though there was no sound but the whisper of leaves in the wind. "This forest will test you," Kale said quietly. "It will show you your fears, your doubts, and your deepest truths. You may want to turn back, but do not. You must see yourself clearly." Lyria swallowed, gripping the folds of her dress. She had spent her life hiding from mirrors, hiding from reflections, hiding from herself. Now she had no choice. As they ventured deeper, the forest seemed to come alive. Shadows shifted, forming shapes that resembled people she had known, friends, family, strangers, all whispering the things she had long feared. "You are too much. No one will ever love you. You are not worthy." Her heart raced and her knees felt weak. "Kale, I don't think I can," she whispered. He stopped, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. "You can," he said firmly yet gently. "Fear is a test, not a prison. Look at the shadows, but do not believe them. They are illusions of the mind, not the truth of your heart." Lyria nodded, though her chest was tight. She took a deep breath and forced herself to walk forward. With every step, the shadows grew more intense, more real. She saw herself as a child again, standing in front of the mirror, cheeks red with shame. She saw Althea laughing with others and her own reflection twisted, mocking her. Tears stung her eyes. "I, she said, her voice breaking. "You must," Kale said, his voice calm but insistent. "Not for me, not for them, but for yourself. You must see who you truly are." Lyria's legs shook, but she pressed forward. Slowly, the shadows began to change. The twisted faces of mockery softened. The cruel whispers faded. And then she saw her reflection, clear, unbroken, shining in the moonlight. Her eyes, once filled with self-doubt, now held courage. Her cheeks, full and warm, glowed in the silver light. Her body was strong and alive, not something to hide but something to honor. She stopped, staring at herself, disbelief and awe warring in her chest. "Is this really me?" she whispered. Kale stepped closer, his presence like a shield around her. "Yes," he said, "this is who you were always meant to be. The mirrors you feared, the voices that hurt you, they were never truth, only illusions." For the first time, Lyria felt a spark of strength inside her. She could feel the fear melting into courage. She could feel the weight of years of shame lifting, replaced by something lighter, warmer, almost like hope. Kale's crimson eyes softened as he looked at her. "You see yourself now. And in seeing yourself, you will find the power to change the world around you." Lyria turned to him, her chest still racing. "I don't know if I am ready for that," she admitted. "You will be," Kale said. "But you must trust yourself. Trust the strength you did not know you had." They walked together deeper into the forest until they reached a small clearing where the moonlight shone like silver rain. In the center was a pool of water, perfectly still, reflecting the stars above. Kale gestured to the water. "Look into it," he said. "Not to see your face, but to see your soul. What is hidden in the deepest part of you?" Lyria knelt by the edge, peering into the reflection. The water shimmered, and for a moment she saw not just her own face, but images of the life she could have. She saw herself standing tall, respected, loved, and whole. She saw the person she wanted to be: strong, brave, and unafraid. Tears rolled down her cheeks. I don't know if I can be that person," she whispered. Cale knelt beside her, silent for a moment. Then he said softly but firmly, "You already are. You have just been blind to it. The courage, the compassion, the heart you have, these are your truths. They cannot be taken away." Lyria took a deep breath, feeling the power in his words seep into her. She closed her eyes, letting herself imagine a life without fear, without shame, without hiding. For the first time, she allowed herself to hope. Suddenly, the forest shifted. The trees groaned and the wind howled. Shadows stretched toward them, darker and heavier than before. Lyria opened her eyes to see shapes moving among the trees, figures she could not recognize but whose presence felt threatening. Cale rose, his eyes glowing crimson, his body tense and ready. "They have come," he said, his voice low. "Enemies from my past. You must stay close to me." Lyria nodded, gripping his arm as the shadows drew nearer. The figures stepped into the clearing, revealing themselves as tall, imposing vampires, their eyes sharp and cruel. They circled the pool, their movements silent but full of menace. One stepped forward, a female vampire with silver hair and eyes like ice, her gaze locked on Lyria. "You are not hers to save," she said, her voice echoing through the trees. "Do not think you can change what has been set in motion." Cale's jaw tightened. "She is not yours to touch," he said, his voice ringing with authority. "Leave now or face consequences." The female vampire laughed softly, a sound like breaking glass. "You always protect the weak, Cale, but even you have limits." Lyria felt fear, but it no longer consumed her. She looked into Cale's eyes and saw not just power, but trust and belief in her. For the first time, she realized she could face this danger, not as a helpless girl, but as someone who carried strength within her. "Stay behind me," Cale said, placing himself between Lyria and the approaching vampires. "Do not be afraid. I will not let them harm you." The vampires lunged, shadows moving faster than the eye could follow. Cale's powers flared, crimson light glowing around him as he moved with a speed and grace that took Lyria's breath away. Yet, despite his strength, she could see he was not invincible. One vampire landed a strike that grazed him, drawing a thin line of blood across his shoulder. Lyria gasped, her heart pounding. "Cale," she cried, fear surging through her chest. He turned toward her, eyes fierce yet calm. "You can help," he said. "Trust yourself. Trust what you have learned. The courage you carry, it can protect us both." Lyria's mind raced. She had never imagined herself as a fighter, never believed she could influence anything. But now, standing in the moonlit clearing with Cale trusting her, she felt something shift inside. She raised her hands instinctively, focusing on the strength she had discovered in the forest. A wave of energy pulsed outward, pushing the shadows back, startling the vampires. Cale nodded, impressed. "Good," he said. "Do not stop." Together they held the circle, energy flowing between them, until the vampires, shocked and wary, retreated into the forest with snarls and threats. The clearing grew quiet again, the mist curling softly around them. Lyria sank to the ground, exhausted but exhilarated. She had faced fear, shadows, and enemies she did not understand, and she had survived. More than that, she had helped. She had helped Cale, and in doing so, she realized she was no longer the girl who hid from mirrors and shadows. She had found her courage, and it shone brighter than she ever imagined. Cale knelt beside her, placing a steadying hand on her shoulder. "You see," he said, "you are stronger than you ever knew, and this is only the beginning. The world is full of darkness, but also full of light. You can carry both within you." Lyria nodded, tears of relief and pride in her eyes. I think I understand," she whispered. Cale smiled, though a shadow lingered in his expression. "Good, but the night is not yet over. There are more trials ahead, secrets you will need to face, truths you must learn, and you must be ready for them." As they began walking back toward the castle, a new sound echoed through the forest, a soft, chilling whisper that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Lyria stopped, her heart skipping a beat. "Kale, what is that?" she asked, her voice barely audible. He turned, eyes sharp, glowing crimson in the moonlight. "That, Lyria," he said, his voice low and serious, "is a warning. Someone or something knows we are here. And it is coming for you." Lyria's stomach dropped. The forest had tested her courage and she had survived. But now a greater danger loomed, one she could not yet see. She looked at Kale, trust and fear mingling in her chest, and realized that her story was far from over. The first light of dawn struggled to pierce the thick mist that still clung to the castle of Eldoria. Lyria stood at the edge of the forest, her chest heaving from exhaustion and fear, her eyes scanning the shadows. The whispering voices of the night had returned, carrying warnings she could barely understand, but she no longer felt paralyzed. The courage Kale had helped awaken inside her burned brightly, like a flame that no darkness could extinguish. Kale emerged from the mist behind her, his tall figure shadowed by the soft morning light. Crimson eyes softened into warmth as he studied her. "Are you ready?" he asked. Lyria nodded. "I am," she said, though her voice was steady, not confident in a way that denied fear but strong enough to face it. "I have to finish this, for you and for me." Kale's gaze lingered on her, a mixture of pride and caution. "Then let us go. There is no turning back now." The forest seemed alive, tense and watchful, as they moved toward the clearing where the vampires had confronted them the previous night. The mist thickened again, curling around their legs, and the trees groaned softly as though whispering secrets of old magic. Lyria gripped her own hands tightly. She had never imagined she could face these creatures, let alone stand beside someone as powerful as Kale. Yet she did not hesitate. As they approached the clearing, a figure emerged from the shadows, the silver-haired vampire from the night before, her eyes cold and calculating. She was taller, more imposing in the dawn light, and her presence carried an authority that made even Kale tense. "You are persistent," the vampire queen said, her voice smooth and chilling. "But persistence will not save her." Kale stepped in front of Lyria, the faint glow of his powers shimmering around him. "She is not yours to touch," he said, his voice steady. "Leave or face the consequences." The queen's lips curved into a mocking smile. "Consequences? Kale, you were always too soft. You think you can protect her. You think she is strong enough." Lyria's heart raced, but this time fear did not control her. She stepped forward, drawing a deep breath. "I am stronger than you think," she said, her voice shaking slightly but growing steadier with every word. "I will not let you hurt him, and I will not hide anymore. I will fight." Kale's eyes met hers and he nodded. "Good, trust yourself, trust what you have learned." The queen's expression darkened. With a sudden motion, shadows rose from the ground, forming into tall, twisting shapes that reached toward Lyria. The energy was cold, heavy, and suffocating, but Lyria did not step back. She remembered the courage she had discovered in the forest, the truth she had seen in the magical mirror, and the strength that had pulsed through her hands the night before. She raised her arms instinctively, focusing on the energy inside her. A bright light began to glow, soft at first, then growing stronger, pushing the shadows back. Kale's power flowed alongside hers, a perfect harmony of strength and trust. Together they held the circle, forcing the shadows to retreat until the vampire queen took a step back, surprised and wary. "You," the queen whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "You are more than I expected." "I am who I am," Lyria said firmly. "I will not be afraid. I will not hide, and I will protect the ones I love." The queen's eyes narrowed, and with a swift motion she vanished into the mist, leaving behind a faint echo of warning. "This is not over," her voice carried. "The past is not done with you." Lyria's knees trembled, but Kale's hand on her shoulder steadied her. "You did well," he said softly, "brave and strong. You are no longer the girl who hid in the shadows." Tears pricked her eyes. She had spent her whole life believing she was invisible, unworthy, flawed. Now, standing in the clearing, surrounded by the soft glow of her own power, she understood that she was neither invisible nor weak. She was whole, brave, and capable. Kale studied her, his expression softening. You see, Lyria, you are perfect not because others say so, but because you have found your own light. That is what matters. She nodded, her chest swelling with a strange mixture of relief and awe. I never thought I could feel this way, about myself. Kale's eyes softened further, a rare vulnerability in his centuries-old gaze. It takes time and courage, but you have both now, and I see you. For the first time, Lyria felt the truth of his words deep in her soul. She had feared mirrors, feared judgment, feared the reflection of her own body. But now she realized that the reflection had never mattered. What mattered was the person she had become, the strength she had found, the courage she had embraced, and the love she could allow herself to feel. They began walking back toward the castle, the mist thinning, the forest growing quieter with every step. Lyria felt a sense of peace she had never known. The shadows had tested her, but she had endured. She had fought, and she had grown. When they reached the highest tower of the castle, Kale paused, motioning for her to follow. The room was circular, with windows that opened onto the moonlit city below. The soft light reflected on the stone floor, and for a moment the world felt quiet, still, and infinite. Kale turned to her, his expression unreadable for a moment, then softened into warmth. You have changed, he said, stronger, braver, truer, and in doing so you have lifted a weight I carried for centuries. Lyria tilted her head, curious. What do you mean? Kale's voice was gentle, almost vulnerable. For hundreds of years I was trapped in fear and anger, in shadows of my own making. I believed I could never love, could never trust, could never feel. But seeing you, seeing your courage, your heart, you have shown me that redemption is possible, that even I can be free. Lyria felt her chest tighten. She had never imagined that her journey would also touch someone else's heart so deeply. She reached out, placing a trembling hand on his arm. Kale, you've changed me too, she whispered. Not just tonight, not just in the forest, but in every moment you helped me see myself. Kale's eyes softened, and for the first time the centuries of weariness in his gaze seemed to lift. And now, he said, his voice steady, yet full of emotion, we face the future together. Shadows will come, dangers will come, but we will face them as one. You are not alone, and I will always be by your side. Lyria's heart swelled. The girl who had hated mirrors, who had hidden from her own reflection, now stood tall, radiant with courage and hope. She realized that perfection was not about looks or weight or what others said. It was about embracing oneself fully, standing strong in the face of fear, and allowing oneself to love and be loved. Kale extended his hand, and she took it without hesitation. Together they stepped onto the balcony, the first light of dawn painting the sky in soft shades of pink and gold. The city below was waking, but for Lyria, the world had never felt more alive. You are perfect, Kale said again, his voice carrying over the city, soft but unwavering. And now I am yours as you are mine. Lyria's eyes met his, filled with trust, admiration, and love. She smiled, finally understanding what those words truly meant. She was perfect, not because someone else said so, but because she had found her own strength. And in finding it, she had lifted Kale's heart as well. The wind carried a quiet promise around them, rustling the leaves in the courtyard below. Shadows still lingered in the corners of the castle, remnants of old fears and past enemies, but Lyria no longer felt powerless. She was ready. She had faced the darkness, embraced her courage, and discovered the light within herself. Kale pulled her close, and for a moment the world seemed to hold its breath. The castle, the forest, the night itself all felt still, waiting for the story of Lyria, the girl who had hated mirrors, to be told. And in that stillness she realized that this was only the beginning. The shadows might return, the world might challenge them, but together they could face anything. Whatever comes, Lyria whispered, resting her head against Kale's chest, we will face it together. Kale's hand brushed gently across her back. Together, he agreed, his voice low and steady. And nothing can take that from us. The sun rose higher, spilling light across the valley. The castle, once a place of fear and shadows, now seemed alive with possibility. And Lyria, once a girl who hid from mirrors, now stood unafraid, radiant, and whole. She had seen herself clearly for the first time, and in doing so, she had found love, courage, and a future she could finally embrace.